Well, hi everybody, I'm Albert Hilazo, and I will talk to you about my first months as a new Perl developer and my experience. So, who am I? I live in Barcelona, Spain, and I'm a developer for YAPC, and I'm only 7 months old in Perl. So, it's also my first time here at YAPC, and hi Perl community, I'm your new baby camel. So what about my background? I have worked with other areas and languages, but my main strength is web development with PHP and JS. Or anyone has their opinions on this. But mainly I'm used to big communities and lots of documentation tools. So my story starts 7 months ago. I was a happy person. Then I got a new job at Capside. And on my first day there, they told me, we're going to teach you Perl. And this sounds so dramatic, but I already know that there was no trap there. So my first week mainly was this. And after the first week, basically this was me. So step by step. First, sigils. Basically these things here. No context. Why? My response to this was, why is this needed? I must admit that this was a problem for me at first. The concept, the idea is not difficult, it's easy to understand. But it took me way too long to wrap my head around it and get used to this way of doing things. And frankly, I still miss to see the point in this. Sure, they give you context, but why can't we treat every array as an array ref, like a C array or in other languages? Sure, you could limit yourself to use only array refs, but you still have to reference and dereference everything with ref, map, etc. Also, having these two, sorry? Yeah, I should have skipped there. True. Well, this has a problem too, like using arrays references, and the references have different ways to access the arrays, and you end up mixing them, using the arrow or not using them. So why not normalize it? Why not use only one way, as I said, like a C array? Since, as far as I know, you can do this. So, having said this, I understand that this is the way Perl works, and there's people that like it. But well, this was at least this was my reaction. I have only talked about lists and arrays for a purpose. Since they seem to be so important in Perl. Well, you have they're everywhere. You have hashes, but a hash is, in the end, another array. It's another list. Functions and subroutines don't have signatures, at least until Perl 5.20, if I remember. But arguments are passed in a list too. So, as I say, they are everywhere. They seem to be important. So well, I frankly find difficult to see the advantages in sigils when it's something that affects every point of the language. From there, we went to packages. And remember that this was my first week, I was packing all these new concepts in my head. And when I got at this point, I thought, this sounds familiar. So Perl is a dynamic language that is used for object-oriented programming. Well, yes, but if you want to keep your sanity, to use OOP, you have to use something like Moose. And well, this was strange to me that it wasn't native, right, sincerely. And Moose is great, don't take me wrong. I really in love with many of the features of Moose. And as you say, Perl 6 goes in that direction, so I made sure for it to come. Well, from there we went to modules, since I already got Muse, dependency management, the cpan, and from there all the common modules that I was going to use, Carton, Catalyst, Divids class, etc. Those are great and powerful tools. I have no problem there. It's there in cpan is filled with similar tools in the same with the same power. And that was most for my first days. But there was one last concept that started appearing everywhere, and it's the main point I wanted to get. Tintode. There is more than one way to do it. For many people, this is one of the best things in Perl, and I sincerely like the philosophy. I have no problem. I'm okay with it, but it's the source of my main problem. I will get there. First, I want to give you some perspective for you to understand me and not, and I don't get hit when I go out. So, from a beginner's point of view, when you start to research the language and go Googling, etc., you find a lot of posts online like this. Is Perl dead? There's sincerely a lot of this. So you start to read, things look bad, people recommend to learn another language, others say that Perl 6 will be the resurrection of Perl, similar things, but Perl 6 has been in development for 15 years. It's released yet, but it will come. It will be ready for production. But the general impression was in this line. Then someone points you to the cpan. You see this. These are the stats for the cpan uploads from cpan testers. And well, there's a lot of new code uploaded every day. So things are not that bad. Is Perl dead? No, it's not dead. So with force renew, you say, let's do it. We will keep digging. You start reading model Perl, check Perl dog as you're developing, Perl Maven, Stack Overflow questions, and Perl Monks. Perl Monks seems to be the go-to site for Perl questions, but every time I go there, it's like going back in time. You get the impression that everything there is already deprecated. And I know it's not, but I know I thought that in the very first times that went to the site. And that brings me to this. Does Perl look dead? It's not, but does it look it? Maybe. I don't know. Why? Well, as you keep learning the language, and get a better understanding, you try to get to higher layers. You research more advanced concepts, but something's missing. Something that I saw in other languages and I was missing here. What I miss? There's a lot of talk about the language everywhere, but there's so few about what people is doing with the language. I have trouble finding this. I will explain. When you research, the most of the documentation is about cpan modules, how to use them, how to use most of the functions in Perl, but it's like an expansion of official documentations for the module or for the language. But there's not much documentation or projects with Perl. How to use Perl to develop a certain project, or which problems can you find, how to organize your code. I will go to that. If you're like me, when you start learning a new language, if you start in a new area in general, you search for the recommended ways, the best practices, best tools, frameworks. And this might seem a bit cross-minded, But when you are new in something, you don't really have the context. You can make your informed decisions. So you go for the majority. You go for what's recommended. In a similar way, when you're facing a problem or a new technology that is unknown to you, you look for clues and for ways to solve your problem that others have applied. And that's what I miss in Perl, mainly. That's something that I have found in other languages, and I find it here missing. To know what the community is working on. How are you developing? For example, as I said, my background is from, I come from PHP, and I know what PHP developers are working on, how they structure their code. I know that most of them are implementing domain-driven development, that they are much focused on solid principles, and I'm sure that the community has something similar to applies many patterns, many architectures, but I can find documentation, I can find someone talking about this. I don't really know what's going on with the Perl community, which patterns, which architectures are common. I miss this ecosystem where people explain their projects, how they develop them, which problems did they find, and create help and documentation about their way of doing things. Instead, I mostly find help about language functions or module features, as I say. Things that, of course, are really, really helpful, but are too coupled with the language and know how to use it. Well, I want to tell you about a personal experience, so I can give you an example. When I started testing my code, I started to research on the subject, and I know that the Perl community is no stranger to testing. So this surprised me because I started with test more. There's plenty of documentation, but even if it's mostly about simple use cases. As my code was getting more complex, I started with test class, and the amount of documentation dropped completely. There's documentation about test class, of course, and I want to clarify that when I say documentation here, I don't mean the official documentation. I don't mean the module documentation. I mean people talking about this module and using it, giving examples, etc. Projects using these modules. From test class passed to test class moves, and there was even fewer documentation. But it's the same problem. The documentation I found was talking about the features of the module, same as with test class. Not how people structure their tests, not test templates of a test class. And no problem, I ended developing my own system that I will improve, but I miss this. I miss that someone shares these things, these methodologies, things that maybe I didn't think of. So as the complexity of my code increased, and I needed more powerful tools, the documentation related to this was dropping, and the impression it gives, at least for someone new, is that Perl is mostly used for simple things, which obviously is not true at all. I deny to believe it, and I've seen that it's not true. But it's the impression it gives, since the real examples, the use cases that are shown as simple, not complex project structures or similar. Well, another comparison, so you understand what I'm saying, is that I miss that someone explains their Git flow, know which Git commands they use. So going back. What was that? I said, oh, Tintaudi. Well, I kind of blame it for this problem I had. In other languages, have standards, have defined the same patterns, which leads in the end to an easier maintainability. There's, in languages like Python, there's limited ways or very defined ways to do things, and that's kind of comfortable. You only need a little of research to find the way people do things, and you follow it. And when you have a higher level, you will improve on it. But that's not the way to do things in Perl. It's not the style. So I'm not saying that the Perl community should find a single way of doing things that should drop the Tintaudi. But the impression I give, the why I blame Tintaudi for this is that it's like the people think, why would I give my way of doing things, why would I explain it if anyone can do it in their way? So that's, I don't see the reason for this, but it's the impression I get. If, yeah, you can have your way of doing things, I can have mine, but explain it, share your way, give guidance to others. Maybe your way is better than mine. I simply didn't think of it. Maybe I can find a better way of doing things thanks to your way. Maybe we can combine them. And then when I have more experience, I will take my own decisions. So, as a conclusion, how is Perl for a beginner? Well, previously I presented two questions: is Perl dead, or does it look dead? And I saw that it's definitely not dead, but it looks so. But that brings me to another question: is Perl beginner friendly? And I would say not really. I would say not really, because if I had started learning the language by myself, it was not for my colleagues that helping me and tutor me, I would have probably dropped it. Not because I couldn't learn the language, but I would have not found a way to grow with the language, to go to complex projects with Perl. I don't know, maybe it's my experience. Maybe another beginner has another experience. But it's what I found. So how can we improve that? As I said, share with your community, explain your methodologies, and teach your newbies, please. As that at least was my experience, and I have seen here at YAPC. It's my first time here. I have seen talks that are precisely what I'm looking for. This morning, for example, there was a talk about using Perl with Elasticsearch for a local search engine. I would have loved to find something like this explained in an article or opinions, whatever, when I was trying to use Perl for Elasticsearch, for example. Someone that has tried that same scenario before me and can give me some opinions, some solutions for what I was finding. But a beginner won't usually come here to YAPC to start. You can look the videos, but maybe it doesn't know. Maybe it doesn't know that YAPC exists. So there's a great community. It's definitely not dead, as I saw. But I think the community should be more open, so share better what others are doing. If you're working on a project, share your experience, share what problems do you find, share the project itself, so others can follow your path and improve your project, improve theirs, and don't go everyone in their way. There's a saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. So, well, if we can help each other, if we can share which projects we are working on, we will get a better community image, and we can help. So, thanks for receiving me in YAPC. Thanks for coming. And that's all. I was feeling that. No, well, I haven't tried Ruby nor Scala. Find it's, as you say, it's something. It's more of a problem in the way of teaching the language. Not, it's not a problem of Perl itself. That's why I kind of blame. Maybe I should put quotes on blaming, but I blame Tim Toady because it's the most community part of the language. It's the moral philosophy of developing. But I totally agree. It's in the way of teaching. But if I had in my home for fun tried to learn the language, um, I wouldn't have had the resources that my colleagues gave me or the experience they showed me because I couldn't find them online or anywhere. There's books, sure, but the books, the majority, or at least the books that I have read, focus in the language itself, in its features, its tools. The same with CPAN or most of documentation. And as I said earlier, when I talk about documentation here, I don't mean official documentation. I mean articles and explanation. But totally, yes. Maybe if I had tried another language, it depends on their community how open they are. In the language I come from, PHP or JavaScript, PHP has lots of problems, but as I said, that's the opinion of each one. But PHP and JavaScript too has a lot of problems, but the community is aware of these problems and creates tools and creates documentation to affront to attack these problems, to cover them, and that's what I'm missing here. Oh, your question is why I use this example. Mhm. Great, thank you. Good. Mhm. Not all of them. No, simply Googling. When you are you're developing in a new project, you Google, for the example I put earlier, using Elasticsearch with Perl. Maybe I looked at for PHP and I found personal blogs in Medium, whatever blog, people explaining their experiences and what did they find, how they solved their problems. And that's what I personally, maybe the experiences of others is differently. Maybe I don't know how to Google, right? but, but that's what I can find. I can find this kind of experience or sharing. I don't know if that was your question. Thanks. Look, for you it looks dead only for the public impression, not before entering the community. Yeah. That's that will be a good summary of what I wanted to express. Yeah, thank you. There's more. Mhm. I don't say that they are. It's not an absolute truth that they are great communities. I don't want to express that, but at least I get the impression that they are more easier to share their things, to write about it. Maybe they are big communities, and it's more probable that people explain. Hmm. Oh yeah, as I said, probably in another communities there's this problem too, but this doesn't mean that we can from this and that we can and try to solve this problem. So we can grow as a community. So we can be easier for new beginners to come and start writing Perl. Even more now that there's Perl 6 is coming, and we can go to an easier, not plain packages way of developing. So, excuse me? Mhm. Uh, how will I set up an ideal module documentation or what? Mm-hmm. Well, it's what I find missing is not that much about CPAN modules, but things that are common in all languages, but each language implements in their own way. For example, I ask about design patterns or architectures that they can be applied in and the experience I have with other languages and other projects, I am trying to apply it in a Perlish way, as much as I can, to my Perl projects. But I have to do it slowly in trying to import my knowledge to the language, and I will try to be the example and write about it if I can. But this kind of things, not that much about the modules. There's already ways to to manage dependencies and that, but how to manage the code itself, how to use certain design patterns or examples of implementations. For example, most architectures or design patterns itself base their base is an interface, it's an object interface, and the most similar way is the has is the require, but don't have signatures. So you can apply an architecture or a design pattern in Perl, but it won't be implemented in the same way as other languages. And this is the kind of things that I find missing. I don't know if that answers your question. Not that much about the modules itself. Anything else? Yeah. I don't plan to explain to the community. I just got into the just this, just share and write about it. And if you are developing a new tool that will manage modules in another way, talk about it. I'm developing this and it will work this way. I'm finding these problems. Something like this, that you as an outsider, if you start to research about Perl, that you get an impression, a public view of what is being done. Just this. Not, I wouldn't dare to give examples, but it could be anything. Just if you're working on something, write about it, share it, so the others have a view of what is going on. I hope so. So the other way, if you have some guide for me to, maybe I simply haven't researched currently. Maybe there's some place where I can find this information and I'm completely ignoring it. If you have. Mhm. I, I will try to be the example and share. I, I hope I have time to be the example and write about my own solutions to the problems I find. Of course. Anything else? Thank you to them.